Hi, Steve. Thanks for joining me today to talk about AMAWaterways, the Mekong River cruises. I know AMA has an amazing product here for clients that are interested in this destination, and I look forward to learning more about this river cruise with you.
Well, thank you for having me back. I know we've done several of these together over the past couple of years, but this one I'm really passionate about because, as I mentioned to you a little earlier, I was fortunate enough to host about 35 or 38 travel advisors a couple of years ago on this itinerary. And I was lucky enough to get my adult son to travel with me on this itinerary. So it was just a great experience. And I'll just go through the presentation, and you'll be able to tell in my voice how excited I was to be on this. You're halfway around the world. You're in a place where very few Westerners would ever go, Cambodia and Vietnam, along the Mekong River, which really hasn't changed much over the centuries. It's almost still an ancient civilization, especially in Cambodia. So I'll jump right in here. We'll get started, and hopefully we have a nice presentation for your customers.
Yes. Well, anyone that I've heard that has gone on this said it's just very moving, very, cultural, and probably one of the best trips they've ever taken also. So
it is. It's one of, I'm 40 years now in the industry. This is one of the 2 or 3 best trips I've ever taken in my life. Culturally immersive is exactly what I would put it. These cultures are so interesting and so uniquely different from our culture here in the States. So it's just a real eye-opener. This particular itinerary is named the Riches of the Mekong, which just means it starts in the north, goes to the south. And then you and I discussed this earlier, the one that comes up from the south to the north is called the Charms of the Mekong, but same itinerary. And in this case, just quickly, we would start up in the north in the capital city of Hanoi. We spend a couple of nights there. We then spend one night on a luxury yacht on Ha Long Bay, and then we fly down to Siem Reap, where we see all the great monasteries and Buddhist temples from the 12th century. And then from there, we drive down and we get on the Mekong. So all in all, it's about a 12-day program, 7 nights on the ship, 4 nights in other, 5 nights in other places, and just a great itinerary. So this is what it is. That's what it looks like on a map. And here's Hanoi, where we start on this itinerary. Again, Hanoi is the capital city of Vietnam. This hotel, the Sofitel in Metropole, is phenomenal. Incredible colonial French architecture. It has the feel of being back a couple of 100 years in Vietnam. Everyone loves it. The guests love this property. It's such a unique property. It's not.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's not a big, doesn't look like a big chain hotel at all. It's just really interesting. Great location. This is the typical room that we contract for this itinerary. Beautiful room inside, and just a great place to be staying while we enjoy for a couple of days and take people out for local life in Hanoi. This is a typical traffic circle or rotary, we would say here in New England, with all of these tuk-tuks. But basically, this goes around. It doesn't seem like there's any rule of law here.
When you're driving,
there's cars, there's motorcycles, there's these little contraptions moving around, and you just have to trust. You just have to trust your operator that you're going to be fine.
Right.
It's a great. It's a densely populated city. It's 90% of the population of Vietnam is in 2 cities, Hanoi, and in the south, Ho Chi Minh City. 90%. The rest of the country is just rural, like it's been for the last 4 or 5 centuries. So just a great time here. From there, we go to Ha Long Bay. I don't think most Westerners are familiar with this bay, but it's just, look at it. It's pristine. It looks like something out of, prehistoric times almost.
Right.
It's beautiful. It's a couple of days on the bay with 1 night overnight on the Paradise Elegance, which is a luxury ship Just a great extension, a great concept. You're in the area. Let's do Halong Bay, and guests absolutely love this experience. This is what the stateroom looks like inside the ship. Just a beautiful experience. We pamper the guests. The meals are great, and just a great way to it's a teaser for what's to come on this itinerary. Then we go down. We fly down to Siem Reap. Siem Reap is famous. It is famous for, people know it for Angkor Wat, but there's also a series of other very, very famous and very interesting old Buddhist temples starting from the late part of the 12th century. So what you have is maybe something different every day. This is what we use, again, a Sofitel. The property is actually a 5-star plus rated, 5.5, 6 stars, depending on who you talk to. I stayed here with my son. It's unbelievable. The food is incredible, sumptuous. Everything's beautiful. You're right in the thick of nature. This is it's almost like being in the rainforest. I mean, that's the climate, the rainforest type climate. A lot of humidity here. So everything grows like you'll see aloes. We see aloes here. The aloes are like 2 stories tall there. The plants are just huge because it's always raining and always humid. Everything's huge. The leaves of everything are this big. It's amazing. But the food is wonderful. The property, the estate is wonderful. It's a great place to stay. It's our launching pad for this couple of days. In the evening, you will see a lot of this. You see this on the ship in different places. In Cambodia, these are called, the culture is Khmer. The Khmer dancers, the folk, these are the folk dance of the Khmer people. Beautiful costumes, colorful, beautiful music that goes with it, and beautiful young ladies. I appreciated this. Maybe 3 or 4 times we saw something similar to this on this entire week and a half.
Nice.
There's Angkor Thom, which is one of the monasteries, one of the temples that we visit on this couple of days. This is Bayon Temple. Just amazing. It's just look at the size of that. These carvings are 1,000 years old, right?
Right. It's amazing.
And the interesting thing is we want people to understand that tourism here is very careful. You have to be careful as you go in and go out. You can't disturb things. We don't know how long we will be able to visit these places, right? Because they're so old, and in some cases they're falling apart literally just because of the weather and the climate and so on and so forth, right? So you have to be very careful when you visit these places. Here's Ta Prohm Temple. This, if you do the Google search on some of these temples, this image is what comes up a lot with the tree with those oversized roots growing right on top of the structure here, right? So this is a really cool photograph, and you can see some of the carvings in the back. Also, what you might see when you start to Google some of these temples, some of these ancient Buddhist temples. This is Angkor Wat, which I think is probably the most, for us in the West, most popular, what we know about. And the monks from the area, and there are a lot of monks in Cambodia. It's sort of like akin to going to college here. It's a way to get an education. You learn about spirituality, but they also teach you to read and write and speak.
Oh, nice.
So it's a way for young people to continue their education. It's become a monk, and they would visit these temples quite often. And now the 7-night cruise on the AMAWaterways is the ship. Beautiful ship. This is along the Mekong River. And it's about a 4 or 5 hour drive down through the rural parts from Angkor Wat down to where we meet the ship on the Mekong here. And from the outside, it doesn't look like anything too special. It's built a certain shape because that's what the river takes. It's a 3-story ship. She was built, I think, in 2015 or 16. Here's our.
And how many staterooms?
You have a total of 124 guests. So what's that? 62 staterooms.
Okay.
Right? And the crew, and this is a recent photo, and some of them are actually the people that I travel with. I recognize the faces. The crew would be a mix of Cambodian people and also Vietnamese people. The Vietnamese people tend to work in the kitchen and in the restaurants, and the Cambodians tend to do take care of the rooms, the staterooms, and other things on the ship. So that's how it breaks out. and they all speak English. Everyone speak. And by the way, everybody in Cambodia speaks English. It's their second. It's their national second language, which is
Okay.
really neat. It's kind of odd to walk up to people and they speak almost perfect English to you when you're out in the countryside. And they also utilize the U.S. currency as well. So you can use
Oh,
local currency. What you can use U.S. currency, and if you pay for something in U.S. dollars, you get change back in U.S. currency, which is very
well,
interesting.
that's interesting.
Well, it goes back to when they were coming out of the Pol Pot era. The United States actually staked their currency against the U.S. currency and helped them get their economy started when they were coming out of that dark period in the 1990s. So because they are grateful to the United States, they all speak English now and they still use U.S. currency. So that's kind of a neat thing. We are considered friends and neighbors and cousins to the people in Cambodia. They are very open to U.S. visitors. So it's kind of a neat, it's a very neat feeling. This is standard stateroom on the ship on the Amadara, and that's a queen bed, and you can have it easily turned into a twin if you're not traveling as a couple. And you've got two balconies there. You've got a French balcony and a full balcony. Beautiful, beautiful woods all throughout.
Yeah, I was recognizing the rich woods and
Yep.
you know,
Got
the warm
mahogany
feeling.
and cherry woods, and again, the motif is French colonial, which kind of takes us back 150 years in motif. I just noticed on the TV there that it's got 20th century fact. I just noticed that. That's kind of neat. These are the suites started 366, and then there's another level of suites that are 500 square feet. So there's plenty of space on the ship. It's a beautiful ship. This is what the lounge looks like. We do include wine and beer like we do on our European programs. So it's a great opportunity. It's a different itinerary, Darby, than Europe. You wouldn't get on and off the ship as often as you would. When we're in the rural parts, there's really no place to go out at night. Things kind of shut down at after dinner time. So we would encourage guests, stay on the ship. When we're in the cities, you can get off the ship, you can go to the markets, you can do shopping and things like that, go to bars and things. But when you're in the rural parts of the river, you wouldn't get back off the ship. So you come back in the afternoon from your day's excursions, and you'd hang out in the lounge, or you might hang out. Let's see, what else do I have here? Here's the complimentary spirits and local beer and soft drinks, imported wines. They do get their wines from France here. There's not much of a wine market. They don't make their own wines, I could tell when I was there. But there's usually a different cocktail each day mixed with the local passion fruits or mangoes or whatever the local fruits are, and some type of alcohol. And it's always fun to try something.
Oh, nice.
Here's the restaurant. Again, more very, very Asian and combination of Asian and French motif here, architecture. We source all of the foods locally as we do in Europe. And this is really, you can do, again, they have a North American menu, but mostly you're there for the Asian menu, and the food is quite different. I will tell you this from someone who's traveled around the world. Most of the stuff, the Vietnamese stuff is very akin to Chinese food. We get onto the Vietnamese side of the river, but Cambodian food is very different. Some of these things I had never tasted before. So very interesting stuff to try for the first time. But of course, if you try something, let's say at breakfast, and you don't like what the offering is, you can still get an omelet. It's okay.
Yes.
It's okay to get an omelet if you don't.
Right.
You can't get your taste buds around whatever the local dish is, right? So, this is a great thing. This sun deck and pool, swim up bar. Again, it's very tropical climate. You're out all day. You're out after breakfast. You're out after lunch. You're walking around. You usually come back and need another shower because of the humidity. It's just a great thing to calm up and maybe take a dip in the pool while you're having a drink, waiting for dinner, or waiting for the sip and sail. This is where most people would congregate. Would be the sun deck. It's just a really fun place to be. And then there is local entertainment. So in the evening after dinner, we don't want you to think you have to go to sleep right away after dinner.
Right.
So we bring local entertainment. Again, more of the traditional instruments and folk dancing, really interesting stuff. I found it interesting. I enjoyed everything that every act that came on board, I enjoyed immensely.
Well, very different cultural, entertainment that you don't get to
You
see,
don't see anywhere else.
you're in their country and,
Right.
so that's amazing.
I soaked it up. My camera is just filled with
Yeah.
photographs of
And how
people.
did your son, being, different age, how did he like
So he was at
entertain?
the time in his late 30s. He is married to somebody of Asian descent. He's married to a Chinese American, first generation. Some of the food, Darby, he was familiar with because his wife and her family would go to Asian markets and get
Mhm.
fruits and vegetables that we would not be familiar with. So a lot of the stuff that I was trying for the first time, he would say, that's good, that smells kind of funny, but tastes good. So he was familiar with a lot of the stuff that I was not. So he
Okay.
enjoyed it immensely. And the people he seemed to understand the cultures and recognize some things in some of the cultures that he saw from his wife's family.
Mhm.
Here's just a typical scene on the Mekong. I mean, it's down and dirty. It's sort of gritty. These people live the same way they've lived for generations. They've got all these little. They have their some people live on their houseboats. Some people live on these little thatched homes, and they have boats. They go out and they do their fishing and so on. And then when we get a couple of days go a little more inland and go to farms and stuff like that. A lot of authentic visits here. This is the Silk Village visit. That huge dish there has silkworm cocoons.
Yeah, I was gonna say that looks like,
It's kind of weird.
you're right.
You're going to see some stuff there that maybe it's a little off-putting, but the idea then is how it's woven. They have all their looms. All the women have their looms, and they weave that silk into. And you can buy beautiful silk scarves. I came back with a bunch of gifts for my wife and my mom and my mother-in-law, maybe $5 US for beautiful scarves. And if you bought the same scarf here, would be $30 or $40, right? So it was really interesting. And it's a working farm too. They have pigs and goats and sheep, and they had some crocodiles too, because the Mekong still does have some crocodiles. And I don't have the photograph here, but in a pig pen, we walked around, we were looking for a pig, and there was like a 15-foot crocodile in there, and they were getting ready to feed it. So it's really like going back in time. This is like
they were keeping it as like a pet.
Yes.
Oh,
well, better in the pig pen than maybe killing their chickens.
Right. Their chickens, right? Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Really.
Or the neighborhood cat.
Yep. Yes, exactly. So this is the visit to, in this case, was the Otadi school. And they love to show off that they learn English at a very young age. So you go into the school, we're not allowed to take photographs of the children, very strict rules. They encourage us, usually we come with gifts of notebooks and pencils and things like that for the kids, right? But they like to recite in English for us. The kids want to show off how well they speak English. And how old are these kids? 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah.
Almost perfect English, and they can read and write, and it's really impressive, and they're beautiful. The people are beautiful. That beautiful skin tones and beautiful black hair, and it's just great. It's very inviting, and they're all warm to us, and I didn't expect that. Again, we're halfway around the world. I just didn't expect such welcome receptions from the Cambodian people. Here is a Buddhist blessing. And everybody gets a chance to do this. It's an authentic temple. It's an authentic blessing. And in this blessing, toward the end of the blessing, they will just start tossing lotus flowers, and you end up with lotus flowers in your hair, and that's when you're blessed, in your hair and all over your body. And there's a head monk, a high priest or something like that. He's probably in his 80s or 90s, who's leading the proceedings, leading the mass, so to speak. And it's really interesting. It's very somber, and it's very interesting, and it's very authentic. So that was cool. And then Phnom Penh. Phnom Penh is the capital city in Cambodia. And just like Vietnam, I think somewhere is upward of 80%, 90% of the population lives in this city. It's millions of
Okay.
people kind of jammed into this city. And again, you wonder how it all works. You go through these traffic squares, these traffic circles, and everybody seems to be coming at you, but it all works out fine. And great opportunities for shopping and visits, historical visits. This particular visit is to the shrine to the killing fields. And this is a very moving day. On this particular day, we visit the killing fields where they took place. Inside that structure there are probably, I don't know, hundreds of skulls. And where they could, they put the photograph of the person who they belong to, right? It's very somber, and somebody gives you the history of it, and how it happened and what happened with Pol Pot, and how he kind of just devolved into this really evil leader. And the second part of that day, we visit one of the concentration camps where a lot of atrocities occurred as well. So it's just a really, we all sort of went back to the ship, and there wasn't a lot of talking, and we were just kind of quiet and mellow and
Right.
contemplative.
And contemplating what you learned.
Exactly. And it's heavy stuff, and there are movies made about it, and I remember reading about it at the time. It happened in the 90s. So we are aware of it as Westerners, but to go there and to see it and get the connection to the actual people that, I mean, a third of the country's population was killed, was murdered during this genocide. And it was the United States and other countries that helped them sort of get past Pol Pot, right? And get rid of Pol Pot, get past Pol Pot. This is the general market. This is actually what you do at night. So this is about a 5-minute walk from the ship, where the ship is docked, maybe a 10-minute walk from the ship where it's docked in Phnom Penh. And inside that huge structure is just stall after stall of goods, whatever kind of goods you want. I mean, things to eat, things to wear, TV, phones, amazing, okay? And I remember my son being on this, his wife is familiar with these places, and she wanted knockoff, handbags. She wanted knockoff shoes. She wanted stuff that looked like it cost $3,000 for like $45, right? With,
Right.
The one name are instead of Armani, maybe it's Armano or something like that. There's one letter that's different. That's how you can tell. So what goes on in there is there's a lot of handling, a lot of negotiating. They're asking $300 for something, you're offering $30, and you meet somewhere in the middle. It was thrilling. I mean, I didn't buy a whole lot in there, but my son did. He did a lot of his shopping there.
Oh, that's fun.
And
imagine there's probably every type of food you can imagine.
Every
stuff
type
that we would never see in a outdoor market here.
Food in bulk. You can buy a half a pig in there. You can buy, it's unbelievable. It's just amazing. Again, it is the antithesis of how we do things in the West, right? So just really interesting. Okay. And then the Royal Palace also it's a beautiful visit in Phnom Penh. There's a lot of things to do in Phnom Penh. We're there overnight. Here's the rickshaw ride. That's one of my bosses. That's Gary Murphy, Tan Chow. And so basically every place you go, every city you go in both of these countries, the 90% of the mode of transportation is a bicycle pulling a cart. That's really still how people get around. Not everybody can afford a car. Very few people can afford to have a car. And a lot of the younger people now have something between the size of a scooter and a motorcycle. No, they aren't big motorcycles, but they're not really scooters. Something in between. Be something we would call more look like a dirt bike or something like that. There's a lot of those on the street. So very interesting. This is one of the local markets, one of the local outdoor markets where you can do your shopping for vegetables and fruits. That porcupine looking thing.
What is it?
That is a star fruit, okay?
Oh, okay.
And not something I really took to be honest with you. But Asian people love it and swear by it, and a lot of the guests on the ship, we served it every morning on the ship. But just really, what I like to see the local merchants. I like to see these ladies out there with their wares and their vegetables, and it's really interesting. And now we don't allow people to buy stuff off the street markets. We're very careful about what we procure and what we cook and what we prepare on the ship, and we don't allow people to buy anything edible from the street markets and bring it back onto the ship. So we've always been very careful about that.
Okay.
But as far as the colors, I mean, photographs, multicolored fruits, vegetables, just beautiful. And again, the local people are beautiful, hardworking people, and it's just such a great experience. Now we go on to Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. What I mistakenly, because I'm older than you, Darby, and I do remember the Vietnam War. And back in those days, we called the city Saigon, right? Which is, it's a no-no now. It hasn't been called Saigon for 50 years, 45 years. So it just shows my age and my insensitivity. It's not Saigon anymore. It's named after Ho Chi Minh, who was the leader, who was the communist leader during the Vietnam conflict. Very interesting, but you're not in Cambodia anymore. So things change a little bit now. You're in a country that we had a protracted conflict for many years. So it took them a while to get to this point, but they are now very respectful. They treat American, Canadian, Western tourists very well, but it's a little more guarded. They're not as welcoming as our friends and neighbors in Cambodia. So it makes sense. And you have to just mind your P's and Q's a little bit and be respectful of their feelings towards that conflict, obviously, but an immensely interesting visit. And on this particular trip that I was on, was traveling, some of the spouses of the agents I was traveling with were military gentlemen, and they were fascinated with Ho Chi Minh City. There was so much there they wanted to do and see. There's a war museum there. There's all kinds of things there. There was an excursion they had these underground tunnels Viet Cong used to use to sort of get away from our troops. And some of them are still intact. And at certain times of the year when the rainwaters are not too heavy, you can go down in these tunnels and visit. And that was a must do for the older ex-military gentlemen that were on my group with me. So
now, had any of them fought in the Vietnam War? Because I know, like,
there was one gentleman who was in the Air Force, but he was a little late for active duty in the war. He joined the military maybe 2 or 3 years after the war in Vietnam. Maybe there was I think he was just getting involved when the war had sort of moved to Cambodia and what's the other country that it spilled over to?
Yeah, I have heard it's a challenge. It's a challenge for the people that did, fight in that war to go back there. It's very emotional, very, stirring of a lot of, feelings and things. And I think people have to kind of, process that for themselves. What do they want to do? Do they want to, they need to, be able to, deal with all that kind of coming back? Because I know Bill said it was very emotional for him to go back.
And even to go to the it's called the War Museum. In the museum, obviously, it's retelling the history, the photographic history, and there are a lot of our captured vehicles, military vehicles, on the outside of that museum. So it's not the narrative is not a U.S. narrative. It's a Vietnamese narrative, right? And we're the bad guys in that narrative. So you go in there but it's still, if you remember, and again, I was young then. I remember a lot of the photographs we saw, the actual photographs we saw were things that we saw in Life magazine or Time magazine growing up in the 60s and early 70s. So it's moving regardless of what side you're on. Just very stirring, very moving. And then the thing that I remember, Darby, was because my son doesn't have a recollection. He knows it historically, but he wasn't alive during the war. It didn't touch him the same way. He was interested, he found it fascinating, but he didn't have that. I had that guttural feel as I was moving through this museum and reading all the captions and the narratives of what each stage of the war was. But just really interesting. Here's the presidential palace. The other thing that I remember, this is Notre Dame. So this is interesting too, because I mean, before the war, I mean, the French were Catholic, and the city was much of this city was Catholic. So this is what is left. There's not a lot left of the Catholic history
Mhm.
in Vietnam from Saigon, but Notre Dame is still there, and there are still practicing Catholics in the city.
Interesting.
But there was a nice nightlife in Ho Chi Minh City. We did go out on our own. Remember now, this is the extension of the cruise. This is the post-cruise extension.
Yeah.
We're still with you at this time. The cruise manager gets off the ship and travels with the guests that are doing Ho Chi Minh, which is something exclusive to AMA, just like the cruise manager meets them at the other end, would have met them in Hanoi.
Right.
But on this particular, one of these nights, my son and I, we went out on our own. We had gotten a good restaurant recommendation from one of my son's colleagues who was Vietnamese. And we had a wonderful, a really nice dinner. And we had some beer, and we had some local food, and the service was great. And we were very comfortable walking around. So just a great experience there. And you I don't know what you feel. Again, coming back from this trip, it changed, it was cathartic. It changed my worldview because I'd never been to Southeast Asia before and saw how people live with not a lot. People are in this part of the world are happy with not a lot. They don't have a lot of material.
They're happy with their simple life.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Here's another great marketplace where you could go in and just pretty much buy any good or product that you could find in Vietnam would be in this huge building here. So just really interesting stuff. And again, the juxtaposed between the rural life where you're visiting people on scooters that are going up and down. Nothing's paved in the rural parts. It's just their mud streets, their dirt streets, mud streets, and their rice paddies, just like they've been for centuries and centuries. And the people are all happy. It's wonderful. And then you come into the cities and they are crowded. There's huge populations and people are all hustling and trying to sell something. But I don't have a favorite. Both experiences are unbelievable. So that's just the brief overview, the abridged version of what the Mekong is like when you sail and travel with AMAWaterways. You can see, again, I recognize some of these ladies, and most of these people would have, obviously, surnames being Vietnamese or Cambodian, but Christian given names, like the woman in the red dress there, her name was Mary, which is, it kind of just strikes your ears kind of funny, right? So, but just, if your clients are interested, if you have anybody interested, have them get in touch with me. I would love to show them my personal photos, or if they have any questions. I would highly, highly recommend this. And I'll leave it on this note. It's not expensive because the US dollar goes so far against these currencies. To do this itinerary is actually less money than doing one of our European programs with pre and post, because it doesn't cost a lot. The US dollar against the Cambodian currency or against the Vietnamese currency goes very far. So you'd be surprised. Air ticket, not that much money. The hotel stays are a bit, but the week cruise is very reasonable, and anything else you need is very reasonable. So great.
Yeah, I think for clients that want to visit this area but really want to be taken care of and kind of have someone there the whole time, it's a great way to see a lot of the part of these two countries, and not be traveling long distances on land and seeing, from a different view from the water where
we do everything.
Amazing.
We do everything for you. We're with you the entire time, right? And all the services is first rate, and the food is authentic, and the visits are authentic. You couldn't ask for more.
Great. Well, thank you, Steve, for sharing this with us today. I will look forward to clients, asking questions about it, and I definitely will reach out if, they want to see some, photos just from being there. 'Cause sometimes that, helps people decide that, they really want to get there and make this, check this off their bucket list.
Right. Okay.
Great,
Thank
Steve.
you for having me. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you very much. Have a great day.
You as well. Thank you.
Thanks.